Welcome back, everyone, to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk. This is our United show. This is Devil's Advocate, and today, it's a very special podcast here. Today, we are recording our Manchester United versus West Ham preview in the Carabao Cup. I know we played them a few days ago. A lot's happening in the game, a lot's happening in the media, a lot of great discussion to be had tonight, and glad to be joined by my co-host, as always, Mr. Reece Russell. Reece, how's it going today?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. And as always, it's a pleasure to speak to Phil. No bonbons tonight, just chaos. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Reece mentioned, we are joined by Phil Brown from Manchester United podcast, Beyond the Pitch. Phil, it's great to have you back. How are you feeling today?
Oh, good, lads. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, Phil. Anytime at all. So, I suppose, look, we're here to discuss this week's Carabao Cup game against West Ham. Obviously, rematch from Sunday's game in the Premier League. We're going to touch on that game tonight, but also we're going to touch on the game Sunday. We're going to touch on a couple of things such as Jesse Lingard's goal on Sunday. Also going to talk about certain agendas in the media that have been kind of brewing up in the last few weeks. Manchester United are back. And also we're actually going to dive into Phil's recent interview with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as well. If you didn't catch it, do drop down into Phil's YouTube channel, Beyond the Pitch. Great interview there with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We're going to touch on that as well tonight. But first of all, Phil, I'm going to come to you first with regards to, obviously, game Sunday. By all accounts, 2-1 win. For me, I thought we done very well in terms of keeping control of the game. We created a lot of chances. A couple of penalty calls that should have went our way but didn't. But for large parts, Manchester United were the dominant team on Sunday, and well-deservedly came away with the 3 points. What would be your overall assessment just on the performance first in itself and kind of how United managed the game?
Well, it was interesting. Prior to the game, the discussion was this was a very difficult game against a good West Ham team, the best West Ham team we've seen in a long time, let's be honest, against the manager who's doing a very, very good job. After the game, the narrative was, how come United didn't win this 6 or 7-0? Because apparently the only way to justify the Cristiano Ronaldo signing is that unless Ronaldo's coming to Manchester to be Mother Teresa, he's extremely selfish, and there's no justification for his signing. We're also told that City must get £150 million striker to win the league. They don't have to put a Mason Greenwood, and they don't have to put a Marcus Rashford in their front line. They just it's widely accepted they can go buy one. Phil Foden's at 18 minutes this season. It's not getting mentioned. Remember, was it Liverpool Southampton when Klopp absolutely let into Andre Marner for not giving a penalty? And apparently, because he brought up a bunch of other decisions that he didn't give, and apparently that wasn't found by the FA to be an issue. It was perfectly fine. So maybe Solskjaer should have done that and let into Martin Atkinson in the same way that, say, Ferguson did against Chelsea. This is a guy, and this is unfortunately something we see too often with Premier League referees, that now are branding themselves because they're getting jobs in the media. They're doing books. Mike Dean's as famous as many Premier League footballers in his whole image online, and you've got Mark Clattenburg, getting gigs with NBC talking about, just in case you don't have his pair of eyes, that was a handball. And then you've got Jeff Winter releasing books now, and you just get the feeling that they want to be a part of the story, that their ego is so big that they feel that I'm as big as some of these players. I mean, you did this Jeff Winter thinking that the Liverpool supporters were clapping for him because it was the end of his career. I doubt anyone but him knew. And so this is the insanity of where we've reached. And so had United have drawn that game at the weekend, which was a costly 3 points, that would have been as a simply a result of either inaptitude, right, or questionable integrity. I'd like to believe it was the first, right? It wasn't about integrity. To not even look at Ronaldo's penalty, which would have negated West Ham's handball, is there something more important to do than that? I mean, why would you not look at a penalty decision in the 91st minute of a game where that decision, I can understand if you're 6-0 up or something like that, it's not relevant, but we could be sitting at the end of the season talking about a league title on 1 or 2 points. That is massive. And to me, after what happened away in Switzerland, where United were poor and they badly needed a result, I don't think enough. I have no doubt whatsoever, and I'm sure all fans think this, but I'm certain I'm correct. If it had been the other way around, the narrative and the coverage would have been completely different.
Oh, 100%. And I think when you look at the refereeing on Sunday, it was not next to shocking, to be brutally honest about it. And like, again, you mentioned rightly there, the narrative seems to be that the result wasn't good Sunday. All of a sudden, this West Ham team that finished top 6 last year is not a good football team.
Yeah.
You look at the results they've picked up in the last 12 months, it's been very good. Like, they've picked up a lot of scalps. They played really good in the Europa League the other night. So, like, they are a very good team. They're a very good top 8 team, definitely, at least 100%. And, like, to see I suppose, people looking down on a team like West Ham who've, let's be fair, taken points on a lot of these people's teams that are talking in the media, who are meant to be unbiased, but look, we'll leave that there. But clearly, people are worried about Manchester United again, and Manchester United on the rise. And I think the signing, Phil, of Cristiano Ronaldo has maybe ruffled a few feathers in some of these people's caps, and it looks like that they're showing their true colours in that regard. And you're seeing narratives been twisted left, right, and centre. And look, again, it's showing that Manchester United are doing things right. And when Manchester United are doing things right, people start to show their true colours.
Well, I mean, look, we talk about the difference in the contrast in coverage. We need only look at the contrast in coverage whenever it was looking like Ronaldo was going to go to Man City. And then once he went to United, all of a sudden, in space of 24 hours, he lost his legs. And this is part, I mean, in many ways, this is a compliment to United. We know that there's a lot of people in the media that don't like the football club. Right? And that's just part of life, right? When you're extremely successful, most people in the media are 20 and above, so they will have grown up with United being dominant. They're human beings too. They support teams. They have different, teams that affect how they cover the game. I mean, Melissa Reddy, I believe she's ex-LFC TV, where she worked for the football club. You really can't have people. I mean, it's equivalent of me writing articles on Liverpool. And I would understand Liverpool fans being angry at some nonsensical findings because, of course, I'm biased. And so I assume she wrote that article without even watching the game, because I don't know what else United are supposed to do in a league that we're constantly told is the most competitive in the world by these same people. What else they're supposed to do? I mean, is it not okay to go beat one of the top teams in the league 2-1 away from home? Let's be honest, if Ronaldo gets that penalty, we're looking at 3-1. That's a convincing score. Well, there's
2 penalties there, but Phil, there's 2 penalties there. Like, it could be 3-4-1. Not to mention Fabianski pulled off a number of very good saves on the weekend as well. That save for Fernandes was outstanding. I tip my cap to him. Brilliant save by Fabianski there. But like you mentioned there, it's the most competitive league in the world, right? And I just want to mention something. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, from January 2020 till now, 29 games unbeaten away from home. So the most competitive league in the world, where is the narrative how good United are away from home, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic?
Well, look, here's the thing for Solskjaer. Solskjaer's done a good job. The question will be at the end of the season, has he done a good enough job? And this is where United are going to find it a bit awkward, where Van Gaal and Mourinho were so obviously needed to be sacked, right? It was an untenable situation. But what if United finished second again this season, right? There's not going to be the mood around the club that there was when Mourinho was there or Van Gaal was there. It's going to be difficult to sack Solskjaer for doing a good job, just not a good enough job, right? And that's going to be difficult territory because United have had such a short period of time of doing things right. And they're going to be reluctant to roll that dice again and bring in somebody else and go back to where they were. So it's really, really important that the non-football side of the club has changed for good. And the symbiotic relationship that exists between the football club, the playing side, and the business side cannot, what can't happen. See, when Ferguson left, United saw an opportunity to diminished the role and power of the manager. And so the power centres inside the football club changed and really moved it all upstairs to the money men who didn't know what they were doing and really caused United to be in the situation they're in with just disgraceful leadership. The last couple of years, it felt like we make progress every year. Right? This is a United team that's bringing in players that are actually Manchester United players that actually work, that are brought in to perform in a system that actually resembles how United should play. And a system that doesn't need to be ripped up the minute Solskjaer gets sacked. Van Gaal, you need to rip his up because there's nobody going to come in and replicate what Van Gaal does. There's nobody going to come in and replicate what Mourinho does. So each time those managers go, you have to bring in a bunch of new players But now it seems like you need to have identity back. So if they sack Solskjaer, or Solskjaer goes whatever, they could get somebody that has similar ideology. Then this is why the Antonio Conte thing is nuts, right? Good manager, but anyone who watches Conte knows he's a very defensive coach. It's almost Mourinho-esque in the way he plays. So I don't think United will go down that road because I think they may have done a few years ago if Solskjaer doesn't work. But it's going to be a very, very interesting situation. It's going to be a test of Manchester United's resolve at the top. How badly do you want success, or are you happy with the football club being in a positive frame of mind? It still sells shirts, it does all this, but not backed winning trophies. Because if United stay where they are now, there's still enough fans who would be happy where you could monetize that. But United are going to have to be brave if they finish second to say that's not good enough.
I'll pose a question to you just on the back of what you said. So let's say we finish second this season, and let's say we finish, 6 points. Let's say away from top, but we've been thereabouts all season. And we go off and win the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup or whatever domestic cup win or the European trophy. Would that be enough to say for Solskjaer, look, this is still progress. Let's get a couple more players in the summer and let's really make a stab at the title next year?
This is really going to be the question. And see, this is where, look, the FA Cup wasn't enough to save Van Gaal. The FA Cup wasn't enough to save Mourinho, although Mourinho didn't get sacked for when it was where he was, not where he finished, not where he was. So it shouldn't be enough to save Solskjaer. But like I said, the question really becomes, do United want to take that risk again? Are they confident enough in the structures that the football club will not crumble when Solskjaer leaves? And they're going to continue doing that. I said this before. Solskjaer was brought in to manage a club. Mourinho and Van Gaal were managers in a team. All they had to do was get the first 11 right and win most of your games. But Solskjaer had to get the academy right. He had to get the business side of the football club right in that relationship. Talking about directors of football and all that there. He had to do all that. That wasn't... You could even go back to Van Gaal's first press conference where they asked him about, are you here also to work with the academy and bring young players through? He's like, no, I was told focus on the first team, right? So United had a very clear directive what they wanted. Solskjaer didn't have that directive. He had to restore that football club back to where it was. That's a massive job. And there's so much of what he's done that isn't visible. But I'll tell you what is visible. Every time United have a bad result, the players respond. So the players clearly like Solskjaer, right? And they clearly dig deep for him. You even go back after Besiktas here, they beat Everton. So this is and it's not a perfect United. It has big questions to answer this season. But I think the fact that Solskjaer was sitting joint top, yet still having question marks being asked him, it's just ridiculous. And anyway,
the media witch hunt, Phil, it's because he's a Manchester United manager. I think it's because he's not a Jose Mourinho or Louis van Gaal, where they're gonna make the headlines for him. Like, they'll come out and they'll say something ridiculous. They'll do something to chastise someone in that regard. But Solskjaer isn't like that. You see, Solskjaer is the polar opposite to both of them men. And because he isn't going out there and doing these ridiculous things, they're labeling this with a media witch hunt to target Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and it's clear as day.
Well, we'll let Reece come in a second. But look, I think there's really this is cultural, right? So the game goes through different trends, right, of what they like in certain people. So we're in this era of the Pep Guardiola, the Julian Nagelsmann, the young trendy coach, that employs football manager tactics, and everything looked great from a distance. Right? Solskjaer doesn't tick that box because his playing career belongs to an era where most of these young fans that criticize him didn't see him. Right? Wasn't the George Best or Dennis Law where they've got legend icon status, but I've seen some utterly ridiculous. See, if you want to criticize Solskjaer, no one's 100% perfect. There's always areas you can criticize someone in. So when I look at Solskjaer, you could criticize him legitimately, but the problem is the polemic discussion around him from his critics is fucking insanity, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to just use a quote from someone's tweet that was on my timeline. I was days after Switzerland. He's the worst manager in the league. Now, see, when you do that like a capricious child, where you lack no ability to be objective, you immediately render yourself a fraud in the discussion because you're completely incapable of being objective. I accept he's not perfect. I accept he's got questions to answer, right? And there's certain criticisms you're going to have of them legitimate, but when you do that and you extrapolate the complete bullshit, don't infest my timeline with that nonsense.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because I refuse to engage in that. That is such garbage, and it makes you look like an idiot. Because if you genuinely lack the ability to see that Solskjaer, what he's done at Manchester United, is clearly improve our football club. I mean, when we've said here, we've got Sancho, Ronaldo, and Rafael Varane. All three of those players wanted to come to Manchester United, right? All three of them. Now, we're sitting here talking about being one player away, maybe two, a right back and defensive midfielder from one. When was the last time you talked about Manchester United in that situation? Right?
Not in the last 8 years. Not in the last 8 years, not at all.
So they're good to watch, right? United they're sitting. Of 20 teams in the league, they're better than 19 of them, right? And they're signing top players. What is it that you're not getting that you think you should be? Because if you know a manager and a player that United can't sign that make sure they never lose another football game, let me know. I'm sure they'd like to know too, right? So tell me what manager United can hire that makes sure they don't lose anymore, and what player they can sign to make sure. And by the way, Haaland, great player, but so was Kai Havertz and Timo Werner, right? So was Jadon Sancho, right? Be very careful at German league and making assumptions about the quality of players, because if you look at the players that have come recently, they're not exactly setting the world on fire.
It takes time for him to adjust.
Well, it takes time to adjust. Jadon Sancho hasn't played a Premier League game in his life before he came to Manchester United.
Exactly.
Right? So it takes time to adjust, but also, the Bundesliga outside of Bayern Munich is not a great league, right? I mean, Leipzig have come to Man City and get hit by 6. United battered them last season, should have beat them away again, right? Outside of Bayern Munich, no one's really a threat. So it's not a great league in terms of quality, but I think when you look at what Solskjaer has done with this United team, like I said, I don't know if he's a world-class manager. I hope that he is. I accept he hasn't answered that question, but some of the criticism surrounding him is just, it's pathologically weird.
Yeah, and Reece, I'm going to come to you with this on the back of that, because obviously, me and you, we were always often in discussion about Solskjaer, because me and you are two very big supporters of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and we always be objective when it comes to performances and in terms of what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and what we can do to improve. We're always kind of objective in that regard.
And it's always civilized.
And it's always civilized, 100%. And look, there's some sensationalist opinions that have been out there in the last kind of 7 days, let's say, because obviously the Young Boys game happened last week. And then obviously we go away to West Ham again, one of the better teams in the league, and we dominate the game. And all of a sudden people say it's a bad performance. I don't get it. Some of these people, I don't know if they are actual football fans or they watching football with their eyes. I don't know. But for you, what you're taking on basically what I've discussed in terms of the media witch hunt of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and just where we are as a football club right now. Because for me, in the last 8 years, we're in our most stable position.
Yep.
The academy's never been in a better position, like in terms of in the last 8 years. If you're looking at our recruitment side of things, it's been bang on the last couple of years, especially on the Solskjaer. I'd say about 90% of the signings have been gone right so far.
Yep.
And then if you look at our overall style of play, it's way better than it was under Mourinho, way more entertaining, way better than it was under Van Gaal. And under David Moyes, he just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Why do you think this witch hunt is there? Is this because we're in the kind of the social media age of football, if I can call it that? Is this over sensationalized, all this stuff that's going on at the moment?
Well, first of all, that's probably the quietest I've ever been in my life, probably since I sleep. Listen to you guys for 20 minutes, eloquently put. It's summed up perfectly, and honestly, I would honestly put myself back on mute and just let you guys talk for the rest of the show, and I'd be fine. But in the sense of it, I think you're right. In terms of we are in the social media era, and social media dictates a lot because it gives people a voice to either be anonymous or non-anonymous, whatever they want to be, and it's always the ones who remain anonymous that make they're like the loudest opinions, but it's not always the right ones. And I'm not saying no one's opinions right or wrong, but there's some opinions from people that are anonymous that are a little bit off the caution. I'm like, there's no need. But I refer to one tweet, one article I replied to today. Like, I actually quote tweeted it. Phil probably knows which one I'm talking about. It's the last set's apparently going to be Sadio Mane. To be fair, you should be, no offence, you should be quoting on your man's performance, not Man United's, because you clearly didn't watch the game. Enough said. I'm not going to say anything else. But I do find it really annoying in terms of the comments regarding Solskjaer. I mean, I think in terms of like, he's the worst manager in the league and all that. Where's the evidence? It's like, yeah, he gets things wrong, but where is the factual evidence that he is the worst in the league? Because when he got the job as a caretaker, yeah, we were 6th in the league, but we were 10 points off the top 4, and he got us to within a couple of points, and we still finished 6th, but we were playing better football. His first full season,
PSG in the Champions League,
exactly. And he commented on his own performance in the Everton game, which was a standout of the season when we got absolutely pumped 4-0 at Goodison Park. That Digne goal stands out, and we got absolutely throttled. But after the game, he spoke about success for himself, and he spoke about who's going to be here and who's not. But he didn't name names, and I thought that was a good thing for a manager. He's actually protecting people he doesn't want to be here as well. He's protecting them. But if it had been another manager, they would say, oh, that guy's not worth it. He's going. And that was his worst result. You fast forward it to his first full season, great start where we smashed Chelsea 4-0. But results were here and there. And to be fair, first full season at Man United, the job is going to be difficult. So I understand that. And he finishes first.
Managed to get third as well. If you actually look at that, Reece, as well. Exactly. He had a lot of injuries that season. Bruno Fernandes comes in, and then we see the style of play really picking up then.
Exactly. And that's from recognising deficiencies. It was that one defeat. Funnily enough, it was the defeat against Liverpool and Burnley where it all went horribly wrong. And we just fast forward, and then that's us kicking into overdrive. And he recognised that. We finished third. Then his second full season, funnily enough, we finished second. So I'm like, the Twitter section, and it doesn't matter if it's social media, even YouTube. Like, I think people just take their opinions, and then what they're thinking is a fact. Isn't a fact. It's just complete over-sensitized opinion, and they're not backing up with context or a fact, and they're making it worse. If you don't have context, which, to be fair, what Phil said spot on about that guy's opinion about the worst manager in the league. If you don't have context, if you don't have anything to back it up, then it's literally just put yourself as like, oh, it's just a clear agenda against the man. The only way he could physically, like, actually, to be fair, he probably couldn't. Even if he didn't win the league, and then he goes on and wins everything else, and then eventually was to win the league, I would honestly still think he would still get labelled as X, Y, and Z for his management or performances. We had, 17 shots yesterday? Fabianski's made the most saves in the Premier League for the first time in 2 years in a single game. But apparently we were shit. Not what I saw. From what I saw, we actually dominated the game. We should have had at least 2 penalties. One was clear. I'm not even Twatkinson can go to hell. But I'm sick of the debates, Ollie in, Ollie out. I've never been on the side of it. I've always been straight down the middle, where I will give praise when it's due, and I will constructively criticise when it matters, because I'm a Man United fan and I'm entitled to doing this. But just because I play FIFA doesn't make me a better manager than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because it's simulation. It's totally different shit. That's totally different. But I think people just take their opinions to an extreme where they're not actually making an opinion. They're actually just abusing the guy for the sake of it, because they don't have the guy they want in charge.
Well, but it used to be something that was celebrated when a team, let's just say they didn't play well, when a team doesn't play well and goes away and wins.
Exactly.
It used to be something that was celebrated as a positive. It used to be saying, I mean, how many times under Ferguson did they play poorly and scrape the win in the last couple of minutes, and it was considered a positive trait because they never give up and all this. But how United have dropped points against West Ham? This would have been the second league game this season away from home where a major controversial decision that went against United that shouldn't have, did cost them points. Because if you go back to Southampton, that's a foul on Bruno Fernandes. There's just no way, 2 ways about it. It's a foul, right? And so now I know United got a relatively controversial decision in that game.
Yeah,
although I don't think it was as clear cut as Bruno Fernandes. You cannot go through the back of a player. It's simple as that, right?
I agree.
So that's a foul, and so to me, I think not enough's being made of that. And we've had Jurgen Klopp banging on about every major VAR decision that goes in United's favour. Funny enough, he's been relatively quiet recently, but. This never seemed, and one reason why this is important is because when people's confirmation bias, the next decision they get will be all over the media, scrutinised, and they'll forget about the ones that went against them.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody cares about what goes against United. And look, this is just part and parcel of what happens with being, nobody wants to see United back dominating the league. And
except us, because it's pure gold and we get to piss all over them.
And to me, the issue with Melissa Reddy isn't the fact that, because Jimmy Carragher, I enjoy watching Jimmy Carragher, who's clearly biased, but he is capable of being analytical without injecting his own bias. Now, I've heard him say some things on United that I completely agree with. Right? So it's not about your bias. I don't care that she's married or she's with money. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is whether you're capable of being benign with your coverage and not letting that bias affect what you look at, because what she said in that article is just factually incorrect, and it's also lazy analysis, because what what you could easily turn around and say, anyone can lose a football game, right? And that is important, otherwise we wouldn't watch it. So anyone can lose a football game. United were slaughtered after the Southampton game and told this is evidence that they're not ready. It didn't happen the Man City the weekend, of course. But this wasn't evidence of anything for Guardiola, but it's always evidence of catastrophe for Solskjaer. And so this is just part of what he's going to have to put up with. And there's a number of people in the media that don't want to see him being successful, which is fine. But one of the things that bothers me the most is when it comes from some of our own. See, Rio Ferdinand's comments on Phil Jones. First of all, they were despicable, right? Completely incorrect. I don't know how anyone who's injured keeps anyone out of a team. And given Rio Ferdinand's past conduct himself, it was probably not.
It's a bit rich coming from him,
Yeah. Let me just say this on Phil Jones. Like, Phil Jones is a human being who lost his football career to injury. I can't imagine how mentally difficult that would be. And for the people that turn around and use his paycheck as a reason for not extending empathy, has nothing to do with whether you can have the empathy for another human being. Phil Jones could have been a top football player, right? And he was very, very highly rated as a young player, and he could have made a lot more than what he did make had he have been a top footballer. So I hear people that criticize him because he's stolen a living, which he certainly hasn't. And those now criticizing him because he's fit and available for selection. Phil Jones will never be a regular football player for Manchester United ever again. I don't think he'll ever do that at anyone at the top level. I just don't think your body, as you age, gets in a better situation. I think your body entropy continues to deteriorate. So I think no one's got anything to worry about him keeping anyone out of the team. And by the way, if you're a young player and you can't get in the first team ahead of Phil Jones, maybe you're not good enough for Manchester United.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, the Phil Jones thing, obviously, I think you can see, like, especially from Solskjaer's comments recently, he's annoyed at what Ferdinand said. And
I agree too.
And Ferdinand, like, look, let's be fair, he's had his own fair share of controversial moments at the football club. He's also had injuries. Well, he's been out for a kind of long. He had his back problems. He has knee problems. He was out for quite some time with injury as well. So, like, being a professional footballer or footballer at any level, and you should know how going through an injury is like. And at the highest level, when, like, you're under the microscope to a certain degree when you're a Manchester United player, that takes a toll on your physical health. It takes a toll on your mental health. And then one of your former teammates to come out and slander it like that, it's not right. Now, I know Rio apologised, and I don't know how sincere that was. Look, you can take that from what you will, but look, I'm happy that he's back in the squad tomorrow because, look, he's been out for the best part of 2 years. Do you know? And look, as Phil touched on, he's not going to be a Man United centre-half, first choice centre-half anymore. That's clear. We've Raphael Varane, we've Harry Maguire ahead of him in the pecking order. You've Victor Lindelof, Eric Bailly potentially. He's not going to be first, second, third, fourth choice. But he's still a member of the squad who's under contract, who's a Manchester United player. If he comes on tomorrow against West Ham or starts tomorrow, you support the man for 90 minutes. 100%. I dare to say Old Trafford, when he comes on, if either he starts or comes on, Old Trafford will roar him on. Stretford End will roar him on. So, like, look, at the end of the day, people bringing in monetary value into it, that doesn't matter. Like, he's under contract at the club. He's employed by the club. Of course they're going to pay him. It'd be worse if they put him on a pandemic scheme whilst being injured and said, look, your wages are getting slashed because you're injured right now and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Imagine they'd done that. That'd be sick.
Well, first of all, most players are insured. So when they're injured, the insurance company's paying their wages.
Exactly. Like even amateur football, Phil, even amateur football, let's say here in Ireland, right? You pay your membership fee at the club and you get injured at the football club. They pay for your physiotherapy when you're covered by the football club. At all levels, it's like that. So people bringing that into it, I think, is way overboard.
And I know this, I can say this for a fact, because obviously I'm heavily critical of Jones in terms of the fact he's not been around. And it's not just because of his injuries, it's just because of what we've got already in the squad. And I'm thinking, is there any point in us keeping him on? And I've always been honest to that, because I've always well, if he's not going to be available to play for us for X amount of games, why not we just let him go? But the monetary thing seems to be recurring everywhere, and I don't see the point, because you want to talk about stealing a living. Well, there's players at other clubs that have done the same sort of circumstance, so it shouldn't really. You can't just use one for the other because it's hypocritical. I mean, you look at Danny Welbeck, for example. He's been at Arsenal. He's been at now. Where's he at Brighton now and all that? So, and how many times has he been injured?
Listen,
that's and it recurs for him as well. Like, Arsenal binned him whilst he was about to be a free agent. He was on the medical table, and he was looking around thinking he's going to get fit and he may look elsewhere for a contract. Rightfully so, within his right to look, because he may not get first team minutes for Arsenal anymore. And the next thing you know, they binned him, and he was still injured.
Well, there's a huge difference between players that are periodically fit and fit enough to go somewhere and get another contract and a player who's never fit. If you're a potentially buying club, you go through, you say, I need a player, I don't know, right back. And the answer to your question is Phil Jones. And I think you need to take a look at your logic. No one is turning around saying, we need Phil Jones. Right? Because, one, he never fit. So no manager wants a player that is never fit. 2, most clubs can't afford to do what United can do, where now they're going to want him to pay part of his wages if they take him on loan. So talking about why doesn't he leave? You need a buying club to actually leave.
True.
And when you're talking about, I hear these fans moan because players aren't loyal. But yet they're the first people to turn their back on players when it suits them. Look at the abuse they were giving Cavani because they wanted Ronaldo to have his shirt. Despicable little bastards.
That pissed me off. And Keane will back me on that. That pissed me off.
Yeah.
But what I don't understand is I don't know where these people come from. Because when I was growing up, I wasn't old enough to watch George Best, Dennis Law, and all that there.
You got Brian Robson at least.
But I was educated enough to know they were club legends and not to disrespect them. But that is never afforded. I mean, I sit here and I'm reading people abusing George Best's alcoholism in an effort to gas up their current player that they love. Paul Scholes' stats, to justify Paul Pogba being the best. It's just insanity to me. One thing I give Liverpool is their fans respect their legends. Let's just say Solskjaer turned out to be a Kenny Dalglish. Previous club legend, but didn't quite bring the club to the success that he wanted.
Yeah.
Liverpool fans weren't, I'm sure you had individual ones, but collectively they weren't slaughtering Dalglish. They respected the fact that he was a club legend. And any younger fans that thought it was okay to do so would have been quickly brought in line. But you also said something there, Keane, that's important. Twitter is not the real world.
It's not.
It's a microcosm of the real world. So most of the abuse and stuff you're seeing on Twitter is not commensurate with Manchester United, the prevailing view of most United fans. Because, a lot of Twitter is performative. It's designed for retweets, designed for attention. And so you don't get measured views because measured views don't get retweets, likes, and attention. You have to be screaming about something. And social media has turned everything into, hyperbole and drama because everyone's competing. But some of it is just absurd.
Have you seen some of the weird, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a lot of weird comments going around, say, people questioning Ollie's commitment to Jones. And it's all because of how Phil Jones got the contract extension when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was the caretaker manager. There's people that think he's the reason that Solskjaer got the extension. A caretaker manager does not have that authority to give a player a contract. He doesn't have that authority. And they're saying he's the reason he got that contract.
So
no, it's not. But that's
Jones got the contract.
There's people that actually believe, that Jones got the contract because of Solskjaer when it's complete bollocks. Like,
but even if he did, so what? He's the manager.
Exactly, but it's mental. It's like how it is. But I thought, like, going back to that interview when he's defending Jones, he brought up his own knee injury where he said he was out for the bit like well over a year, and he had to get back into football himself as a 30, like well into his 30s. He had to assimilate that himself. So if anyone understands these sort of injuries better than anybody, apart from Rio Ferdinand, who's a bit of a, even though he's a legend, he's a hypocrite, is Solskjaer as well. Like it's baffling, really. Like all the bollocks. I know we can all be at times maybe a bit too harsh, and at times people mean it, and sometimes people just say it like because in the moment, like heat in the moment, in terms of like if it's like a bad performance or this player was shit X, Y, and Z, but then the next day they're like it's just a reaction because of how bad we were. But some people are taking certain circumstances at a whole new level, and I'm like, maybe there's a bit no need for it.
On the Ferdinand thing as well, because if you actually look at, like, I'm not attacking Rio Ferdinand in any way, but I just kind of want to look at his time. You look at players' injuries at the time of the football club. Alan Smith had a long-term injury around the time when Rio was at the club. Ollie had a long-term injury around the time when Rio was at the football club. Gary Neville, another former teammate, was towards the twilight of his career, fucked with injuries as well. Like a lot of his teammates and people who we suppose Roy Keane as well. A lot of people in around that time frame when Rio was at the club at his peak had long-term injuries. Rio should have an understanding himself how that feels, being around these people. And he's also a former teammate of Phil Jones, and that's where I think the sour taste is coming from. In that regard.
We're taking a look at Rio Ferdinand off the pitch and his conduct off the pitch. It's not something that says to me, this is a man that should be listened to when it comes to moral pontification. about what we should and shouldn't do. Rio's last season at United, he was desperate to get away. He was trying to come out here to America. Long before he was allowed to do so, by the way, via his contract. But he didn't like David Moyes, wanted out. But certainly, maybe that was what Rio was thinking about. Maybe I should free up the space for a young player and go meet Chelsea behind the football club's back, meet Peter Kenyon, despite the fact they made me the most expensive defender in the world. And I forgot to take a drugs test. You forgot.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
these
really
things,
it cost us a lot.
Really didn't have to do anything else. Really it was a genuine mistake. He really forgot. It wasn't the mask anything or anything like that.
Yeah, but look, this is where it comes down to it. And I think people can be very fickle in football, and they short memories are most definitely a thing. But look, hopefully, with regards to Jones anyway, if he gets a game tomorrow night, let's hope he can show his work, because in the under-23s, he's starting to pick up his form, fitness. And look, if it's not going to work out from United, then let's say if he plays well tomorrow night and we progress, he may show himself to a suitor, does a continuous football career. Everyone wins at the end of the day. United win, Phil Jones wins, and a potential new club can win. Mm-hmm. That'd be happy for everybody. Or if he
I hear Newcastle looking for players.
Yeah, they could do with a defender or two, to be brutally honest about it. But that's Newcastle. Not going to dive into them because talk about Mike Ashley. If I talk about Mike Ashley, a segue into talking about Joe Glazer, and
we're not getting into that tonight, mate. We're not getting into that.
Yeah, we're not getting into that.
And see, this is the part I don't understand about people creating about Solskjaer. So if Solskjaer fails, what do they think is going to happen? They're going to be kept in perpetual misery where they've got to repeat this every season and watching it not winning trophies. And if that's the case, then Solskjaer is not the problem. It's a football club. If Solskjaer fails, he'll get sacked, right? And you won't have to worry about it. If he doesn't, he succeeds, then surely that's what you want, right? Exactly. Because I get the impression for a lot of people, they're more obsessed with how old their players are than the trophies they win or things like that. They have these weird metrics that they use that really matter, and they're straight from video games.
It's like, the social media era. It's like the football manager era, like football manager, FIFA. All these things are after really ruining the natural love for football. Like, gone are the days, right? You can sit down with your mother or father, or brother or sister, friend, girlfriend, whatever, and sit down and watch the match and appreciate it for what it is, or go to the ground and watch the match and appreciate it for what it is. Like, I went to the Leeds game to start the season, and I turned around to my girlfriend and said after the game, this is way better than just watching at home, because you're not sitting there looking at Twitter at halftime. You're not sitting there, seeing what other people are saying about the game. You're sitting there, you're number one, supporting the team. Number two, you're appreciating the game for what it is, and you're enjoying the overall occasion. Like, social media, as Phil said rightly, is fake. It's all propaganda. Like, that's literally, I know I use that word sometimes when I mess about my love for Bruno Fernandes, right? That's the word I use, propaganda, when I talk about him, because I absolutely love the man. But at the end of the day, social media is not real life. Simple as. Take football out of the equation.
You can have eloquent opinions on there, which is fine, and you can have civilized conversations, because we had one the other night, that space we were on the other night, for example. It was an eloquent discussion, and one of the guys who's agreed to come on the show later on, obviously we'll come on that later, Keane, who's absolute class. He literally went, when he looks at Bruno Fernandes, his first memory, and I thought it was from a young lad, but I've watched the games back, and I think it's absolutely a brilliant comparison. He likened Bruno Fernandes to Brian Robson, because of the way he goes back and forth, and he picks up the ball and he attacks teams, he defends, he gives everything 110%. And obviously, Phil, you'll know this more than I do, because obviously slightly older than us, is Brian Robson, even when he had those injuries, he was still given 110% every time. And I think some players, you question, why does he have to be subbed? Why does he have to be rested? He doesn't have to. Obviously, injuries, obviously Brian Robson had to be, but Bruno Fernandes, he's not been injured once for us. But his overall game and circumstance, when Keane went to the Leeds game, I was fucking jealous because I wanted to go. I wanted to go because I'd rather watch a game live than sit and watch on TV. But then again, winning 5-1 and all that, and you get to see your rival fans cry. Perfect. But you get I think the perfect example is when a fan can speak to you in a civilized manner and just go, "This is what it's all about," and it's none of this, it's none of that bullshit. And you can play a football game, and that's fine. But when you watch it and you're just enjoying the atmosphere rather than having to soak in from Twitter, like I completely agree.
I know. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I mean, many are mine or shite too. I accept that. There, we ramble on Twitter, and that's not all prosaic. But what I would say is that some of the views that are clearly polemic and designed for attention, some of them that I've read are just insanity. I mean, things like Bruno Fernandes is not a top player. I mean, what did I say the other day?
Or stats don't matter. Or stats don't matter. But then they use it for comparison. I'm like, behave yourself.
Cristiano Ronaldo apparently wasn't a top player by someone who claims to support this football club. I'm not even going to extrapolate the rest of it because it's just so ridiculous. And listening to some of this, I assume that it's based on the premise that all attention is good, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Because some of it is just, some of these people are appearing on Sky Sports that are talking about this, by the way. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is embarrassing. This is ridiculous. And I retweet some of my old stuff that I tweeted out years ago that turned out to be absolute nonsense, right? And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But it seems to me that people are deliberately attempting to be this way. And I'm trying to be credible. I'm trying to give them some charity there because I can't take their opinion seriously.
Neither can I.
Want to lose 10 games in a row, so the manager gets sacked, then we somehow go on and win the league after losing 10 games. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. Just saying, by the way, you can't win the league after losing 10 games in a row.
One thing I'll say about this, just to kind of finish off on this point, I do want to kind of talk about the game itself tomorrow. There's a couple of things to touch on. Mm-hmm. If anyone who's a WWE fan or a wrestling fan for that matter, I'm just going to quote Eric Bischoff here. Controversy creates cash.
Thank you.
Controversy creates cash, and that's simply why they do it, to get the clicks, to get the engagements, and saying it for the sake of it because they know it'll A, rile up the fan base, and two, people like us right now, which I'm actually sickened, I'm talking about them particular people right now because of what they're saying.
It gets to you, mate. That's what it is. It literally gets to you. I mean, I've read his book. It's brilliant, by the way. Cheap plug. It's actually worth a read. But you're right. Like, controversy creates cash because literally Twitter and social media to an extent, it's all about clicks and your retweets, your likes, and your engaged opinions. But some of the stuff people come up with, I don't know if they're just doing it to sound like edgy or they're trying to sound original. But you're just showing yourself up to be, not going to say a dick because that's not the right way. But even though I think you're a dick, you're just showing yourself to be like unintelligent on what really matters, and that is Man United. You're just putting out your own personal agenda when there isn't a need to be.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me about it. Anyone can say anything they want. It's when they attack other people for having what is clearly an intelligent, measured view, but they attack them with such ferocity and confidence that they're correct. That's part of the problem. Like, when I read United fans slaughtering each other and some of this Solskjaer back and forth or whatever, I read people spouting opinions that are just insane to me, that bear no resemblance to reality, but are also vociferously attacking other people for having measured views on the basis that their view is particularly correct. I have a problem. I 95% of what I read I disagree with, but I don't take it upon myself to then abuse said individual unless they've got something particularly toxic. So this is partly what makes Twitter unusable, is because when you read your mentions, your at whatever, 95%, well, at least mine isn't even related to me. It's related to people that responded to a tweet a week ago, and they're still fighting over it. right? And it's just filled with this of people just insulting each other. And I just look at it, I'm like, this is partly what my direct message is. I am not joking. Maybe 30 a day from people asking me about transfers and everything else. And they get upset if I don't respond right away. And unfortunately, what it means is there's a lot of people I don't get to talk to on Twitter because I miss their shit. And it's just I don't know. It's just the way
Especially if you don't have a chance to respond to him, because newsflash, people, he's a parent and he's a busy guy. Newsflash. If you didn't know that, he's not just a podcast host. He's all this.
More kids than Bernardo's in my house. And
you're busy. It's not your fault if you don't respond to people, but it's the same shit. And I'm like, there's no need. So I completely agree with you.
I'm just not someone's personal news source, and I'm also not putting in a direct message if there's something that I have that's actually important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's most people understand. I think the thing that bothers me, to be honest, is the mental health tweets that I miss for somebody asking me for the 400th time, are United Centre Holland in January? I don't know.
Because obviously we spoke before. We were on that stream on the United Family last year. We spoke for 2 hours. We spoke on the final end of the stream. We were talking. Literally, our final conversation was about mental health, and you're such a positive advocate for it. Yeah. So I completely understand, because you yourself, you've always advocated mental health in terms of like your own situation. Anybody else, you've always been a voice in terms of anyone who wants to talk about it. You've always been there to listen as well and give your own undivided opinion. So I can understand why someone in your tweets for the 400th time going, "Oh, United going to sign Hallam," and you're like, I'm genuinely more concerned about something else that actually means more than signing a fucking football player that we all know is probably could happen anyway. That isn't important.
No, look, mental health is important to me. But I had an individual message me a while ago. I found their message about 2 months later.
Oh, jeez.
I responded to it, and unfortunately, the individual's no longer with us. That really upset me because most of the reason why I didn't see it was from about the same 7 or 8 accounts that I ended up blocking, who just spammed the living shit out of me for the most insane stuff. And so I just stopped checking my messages because it's just really bothered me. And I'm not saying like don't direct message me. I'm just saying don't spam me, because I'm not going to respond to that anyway. But please understand that it's got nothing to do with the fact that I don't want to talk to you. It's just that I try to make sure that is available for people that are really struggling. And trust me, you wouldn't be surprised how many people are really struggling. And it's a tough word right now, boys. There's lots of people that are at their lowest ebb, that are barely hanging on. They've lost everything, their job, everything, and it's a really, really, really tough existence right now. So I think if you're someone that watches this and you send me a bunch of messages about players, don't. First of all, I'm not a journalist, right? I have fortunately enough, I have contacts where I can ask people certain things, but I don't break stories, right? Because I don't search for them, I don't react, I don't look for them. If someone asks me, is something true, I can find out, right? Occasionally, I can ask those individuals, and they will tell me stuff that's not out there. Mm-hmm. But I'm not certainly sending it to someone in direct message. So.
It is horrible in the circumstance. It is horrible in that circumstance. That was my last point for me, Keane. Just that the circumstance. It is horrible for some people.
I just cut out there for a second. My screen just went circles on my own. Sort of thing. But the new house, new Wi-Fi, new adjustments.
Good luck with it.
But look, Phil. At the end of the day, like you rightfully touched on it. Like there's so many more important things in life to football sometimes. And, as you said, the person who's struggling with real life, like first world problems are more important than the people who are spamming you, looking for football updates. And like,
it's hard to want to be an arrogant arsehole and not be here for people because I'm no different than anyone else. I'm no better than anyone else. But I think the overall message really is just that football is very important to all of us. We found out during this pandemic, but just when it comes to me personally, my direct messages are usually saved for that. I mean, I'm not saying people can't reach out to me, but if I don't send me 20 messages because that's annoying. But anyway, but let me just say this. I'm extremely grateful for every follower that I have. I swear to God, like it blows my mind that people consider me worth following, but it is what it is. I'm really grateful for that.
You know my opinion of you.
No, honestly, lads, it's mad to me, But I'm grateful, and I'm grateful to be asked to do these things out there. And there's not a single individual that's reached out to me that I'm any better than. I'm just, like I said, because I do so much in that particular area, and I'm part of a charity in Belfast that's a big mental health charity. So most of the stuff that I get from people that are struggling, but and if that's you out there, you have my complete love and support, because I know how difficult it is, and how appealing sometimes the suicide sounds, even though it's the worst potential option that's out there, and everyone's life's worth saving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely echo that sentiments.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
My DMs are always open. Reece's DMs are always open. Mm-hmm. Even the channel's DMs are always open. There's a couple of us that have the account. We're always open to conversation. Anyone who has any problems at all, even if they just want to come to have a chat, absolutely do. Even if it's about football, anything else in life.
I chat shit 24/7, so you're going to get conversations from me anyway. So there's not going to be any stuff from that. You're going to get conversation out of me. I'm always around if anyone needs it.
Yeah, 100%. You can't shut you up half the time, Reece.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing, though.
It is, absolutely, and I love you for it. This is why I have you here with me nearly every podcast that I do. Touching on the game itself, it's great that we're actually on this topic, because there's one man who I have great affection for as a Manchester United player, Jesse Lingard.
Yeah,
he's had a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but in the last 12 months or so, lads, he's had kind of a rejuvenation of his career, which I think is fantastic to see, because especially, I suppose, I'd have the sentimentality because he's one of our own. Came through the academy, came through the cliff, and obviously has won trophies, and he's become a first team player for us. Obviously, last Tuesday against Young Boys, one moment of madness in the game led to us losing the game. A couple of days before that, he comes off the bench and scores a goal for his first time playing with his childhood idol, come Luxury United, and Cristiano Ronaldo. For me, it was poetic justice that he comes off the bench against West Ham at the London Stadium, scores the winner, and just, for me, it was an emotional moment, but it was also though dignified, because I Reece, I'm just a massive advocate for Jesse Lingard. He still has a lot to offer in the football club, can definitely contribute a lot, and is someone who I think has a lot of quality as a football player and as a person as well. Mm-hmm. I'll come to you first, Reece. What are your thoughts on his overall week that he's had, and kind of, I suppose the good feeling around the fan base that he kind of really shut up a lot of unnecessary opinions about him in the last couple of days?
Well, shout out at It's You Lingard 14. Inside joke. Keane knows. I'll tell Phil later. It's a funny one. I think you've nailed it in a nutshell, mate. I think about what he had before the loan deal, when it was absolutely shite for him. Family circumstance. I don't want to get into it for him, because obviously that's his personal business. It's not mine to deal, not mine to talk about. But he had the personal business in his home life, which conflicted his form, his mental aspect, which gets to you. And we've all seen it with certain players, and if they don't have the right mental mindset, it's going to affect them on the pitch, and they're not going to be in the terms of the best performance. And then lambasted, you need to sell him quickly. You need to sell him, which isn't the right case. But since the West Ham loan deal, which I thought for him was perfect, I thought it was the perfect split position for him, because the right sort of manager, the system that gets the best out of him, and he's playing a position that I think he's more comfortable. He rejuvenated his career and is great. Was it 9 goals in 16 appearances, something like that, I think, which is fantastic. Yeah. Comes back to us as a fantastic pre-season, And then I don't think he's expecting to play much in terms of the league or the main season itself. He isn't expecting to be it. But he scored 2 fantastic goals that have been important to us. Funnily enough, he's scored every time he's been on the field with Ronaldo, he's actually scored, which is quite an interesting one. The only thing you could say is he had that unfortunate moment where the back pass against Young Boys. Heat in the moment, some people are going to react saying like he's cost us the game. Yes, you could potentially say that, and I can understand why. But overall, it's the team performance that we lost that game. It's not just because of a Lingard back pass, but that is a contributing factor, and that's a fact. And the manager was questioned, why he made the subs in the first place when it worked a couple of days before. The team goal was brilliant. The team goal he scored, I thought, was absolutely fantastic to see. Young Boys, he's back past. We've lost the game. But then fast forward to West Ham, comes on. He's settled himself into the same position, the left-hand side. Cut in, brilliant goal. And adulation. The best part about that whole goal wasn't just the goal itself, it's the fact he had the respect to refuse to celebrate against West Ham. And he has got no connection at all apart from a 6 months loan deal. And he still chose, out of respect, not to celebrate, even though he was egged on by the likes of Ronaldo and Pogba, go and fricking celebrate. And he's like, no. I respect that. I respect that a lot. And for him to show he's bouncing back, I don't know what sort of role he's going to have. Is he going to be here till January and he's going to be sold? I don't know. But in the meantime, he's shown he's still important to the team, that he can get us important goals when we need it. And for himself as a player, you can only help but say, like, admire and say, for a 28-year-old, he's the youngest 28-year-old to play in the Premier League. So fair play to him for still going. And it's great to see that in terms of the bounce back in his career, because after what he's went through personally, and some players, in one particular that's left the club recently that I personally have said on a regular basis wasn't a Man United player in terms of like at the moment, and that was Daniel James. He was getting the same shit about his dad. He was getting the exact same comments week after week, and it wasn't right. Lingard's had his own personal his own personal trauma and his own personal setbacks, and it's not right. He's bounced back, and we'll see where it goes. And if he leads us to something this season, then great. On the other hand, it's just about where he goes. But it's horrible what he's had to go through. But the redemption story is great for him, and long may it continue. Long may it continue.
Phil, on the back of that, Reece mentioned quite rightly a redemption story. Would you call this last 12 months a redemption story for Jesse?
I definitely think it's the best position he's been in his career, in terms of his reputation, and I think that spell at West Ham definitely helped him mentally. I think what happened last week, go back to what I was saying earlier about, is there a footballer out there that you can buy that won't, or a manager that you won't lose another game? Is there a player you can buy that won't make a mistake? Really, the issue for me against Young Boys was why we needed still in a vulnerable position in the 94th minute, where one mistake cost you the game. Yet it should have dealt with going to the 10-man much, much better. Yeah. Right? There needs to be, I mean, you look at what Tuchel did at Liverpool, right? When Chelsea went down 10-man. There's no excuse for what United did. And this is where you can legitimately criticize Solskjaer without having to go to these nonsense levels. He should have done better. There's no question. And I felt that the two subs that he made, Sancho and Van de Beek, were predictable, in the sense that once he was sent off, I knew he was going to be one of those two players. Because Sancho was playing poorly, and Van de Beek, out of the players that are out there, probably has the least amount of trust. So he's the easiest one to take off. By halftime, both of them were gone. So I think that Solskjaer has to have a little bit more depth about him to say, listen, I didn't agree with him taking Ronaldo off either. So I think that was really the issue. Lingard made a mistake. I think it speaks volumes for him mentally that he responded by what he did at the weekend, and still came on, still scored. And that's how you answer all criticism in football, whether it's players wanting away, or if Harry Keane comes back and starts scoring goals for Spurs fans will forget all about what happened this summer. Liverpool fans forgot all about what Steven Gerrard did when he came back and started playing well. United fans forgot about what Ronaldo did before he left for Real Madrid. There was shit going on for a couple of years before he left. So you want to, Paul Pogba forgotten about when you play well. So for Lingard, and again, I see some of the histrionics from people. Shouldn't we get a new contract? Jesse Lingard's too good of a football player to be letting leave on a free transfer if you can keep him. Right? He's a good squad player, no question about it. As you can see, he's got 2 goals already this season. Right? There's loads of clubs will take Jesse Lingard. If Jesse Lingard was a new signing and came from somewhere else, these same people that are criticizing him would be loving him right now.
They'd like, well, sign him.
But it's just a spoiled new toy. I want a new toy. Throw the one out. And you even saw this after Ronaldo was signed. Where's my central defensive midfielder? Now that the sugar rush is over, where's my next signing? And as soon as you got his defensive midfielder, they'll be talking about a right back. And then they're going to be talking about a forward because it never ends. Right? And every generation wants to see their club sign new players. But I just think it gets to ridiculous levels of expectation, and it's not consistent with reality, and the financial reality that's out there. Not necessarily United's, but most teams in football don't have any money. I mean, that's a well-established fact. That's a problem when you need to sell to buy. And I do believe had United have got a defensive midfielder, one that Solskjaer really wanted, they would have let Van der Beek go. I don't think they wanted Van der Beek to go because would have been short on numbers. They weren't getting a replacement, and what Everton were willing to pay for him wasn't enough to allow Solskjaer to go out and get a replacement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And look, I think maybe next summer it's going to be a position where it'll be addressed, no doubt. And look, maybe even we can address it internally. That remains to be seen. Can McTominay grow into that role? Can Garner fully develop again a Forest this season? Ethan Galbraith's playing fantastic in the 23s. We mightn't have to go out and make that big signing. It doesn't have to be a big name. There's been times when we've done it internally too. There has been times. Give it 12 months. I think it's going to be.
I'm looking at him. Everyone knows my opinions on Declan Rice. I don't think he's the best option, but I think it's a guy going to be him or McTominay. I think it most likely will be. But I look at McTominay as the way he actually played against West Ham. Like everyone's like calls him like sideways, which to be fair for being an adopted Scotsman, because he's not really Scottish, but he plays for us. It's really funny when everyone calls him sideways, but when he's playing for us, he always passes the ball forward. And he's passed the ball forward against West Ham. So
his pass for Ronaldo on Sunday, his pass for Ronaldo on Sunday was outstanding.
It was a brilliant forward pass. It was brilliant. And
McTominay suffers from the same thing Lingard suffers from, that he's not a big name global superstar signing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And they talk about Manchester United DNA, these people, but then there's players who embody our DNA and they slander him. It doesn't make sense. But I hope. There you go. Just before we wrap up, just because obviously there's a couple of young players in the squad as well tomorrow. Anthony Ananga playing fantastically for the 23s. And if anyone has seen as well, he's playing unbelievable for Sweden on international duty. Looks like he could be getting called up tomorrow, which I think is a fantastic start for him as well, especially to being around the experienced players. Alex Telles also back from injury. Very excited to see himself as well. And obviously, El Matador, who could that be? Mr. Edison Cavani also back tomorrow as well. In terms of, I'm going to get a starting 11 prediction off both of these men here with regards to tomorrow's game, because obviously, look, I think we're looking to rest players probably ahead of Villa, but also get some players some match fitness as well and well-deserved minutes. Phil, come to you. Obviously, Henderson's back in goal. He's been back in the 23s in the last couple of weeks and regaining fitness after a hard time with COVID over the summer. Would you like to see Henderson getting goal tomorrow, get some minutes? And who else would you like to see to start in your 11 tomorrow?
I think obviously Henderson or Heaton will start tomorrow. It'd be good to see Henderson back. Although what I would say is that we've seen David De Gea produced a form that we haven't seen from him in a long time.
Yeah.
Been a hugely important member of United squad and really a key figure in United collecting points at Southampton and, of course, at West Ham. My expectation in terms of the lineup, if I had to guess, would probably be Heaton or Henderson, Dalot, Lindelof, Bailly, Telles, Van de Beek, Matic, Elanga, Lingard, Sancho, Martial. I'd say that probably somewhere along there would be the start.
I like to sound that lineup too. Like I think that front kind of the three behind Cavani or Martial would be brilliant. I think the movement there would be fantastic. And for me, I think my lineup would be similar. I'd say it'd be the exact same. The only probably difference I'd probably go. See, I probably want Matic to start Saturday against Villa in midfield alongside maybe McTominay. But you see, you'd probably pay Pogba in there in the middle, probably beside McTominay on the weekend. But it remains to be seen. Yeah, I'll go. Do you know what? I'll go Matic, Van de Beek. I like to see Matic get minutes. Go Lingard in the number 10 role. I'll go Martial off left. Martial off the left. Oh shit! I thought Daniel James was at the club. I was thinking Daniel James right wing. I was like, oh no. Oh shit! Right. Okay, Lingard, you're going on the right, man. Sorry about this. You're going on the right hand side. I know you love the 10 role, but you're going on the right hand side. Then we'll go. So we'll give Juan Mata again. So look, we give Juan Mata again for the middle, and we'll go Martial on the left, and give Cavani minutes because I absolutely love and adore that man. One of the best free transfers in a long time. Love that man. And also, I'm going to the Villa game on the weekend, so flying over early Saturday morning. I just can't wait to sing his song. Even if you're on the bench, I can't wait to be sitting in the tailgate at 10 o'clock in the morning with a few beers in hand singing your song. Mm-hmm. So, absolutely, Ollie, at least put me in the matchday squad on Saturday. I know you might watch this podcast and listen, but please heed my request. Reece, do you have anything different to myself and Phil with regards to the lineup?
Funnily enough, I actually do. I have Tom Heaton starting in goal. I do have Dalot, Telles, fullback, Lindelof and Maguire, centre-back. I don't know if Bailly will start. I think he'll stick with Maguire. Midfield, I actually have McTominay and Matic as the pairing. But it's when the front four is a bit different. I have, for my front four, I've got Hannibal, number 10, Elanga left mid, Lingard on the right, and I've got Martial up top.
But do you know what? If Hannibal starts tomorrow, I'm clipping you up, boy. I'm absolutely clipping you up. Because I love,
if he does, I'll be buzzing because he's quality. And to be fair, I watched some of the United lads tonight, and I watched the under 21 game as well tonight. I thought they were fantastic, but some of these young lads getting into the team, they deserve it, and it's just good to see. Even Paul McShane had a good game tonight, kept a clean sheet. So up to you, Paul McShane, mate. So
do you know what though? With the way Ireland are playing at the moment, I can tell you now, Paul McShane could definitely get into our squad at the moment, 100%. Even though he's a player coach at the moment.
Marvin Hackett in our squad at the moment.
Get Paul McShane your defence. You might qualify for the World Cup.
Hey, hold on. Hey, leave Stephen Kenny alone.
Who knows? You might.
Leave Kenny alone. Leave Kenny alone. I love League of Ireland. Leave Stephen Kelly alone.
I'm only messing. But yeah, it's quality. Him and Mengi tonight were solid at centre back. They were solid at centre back tonight.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And hopefully Mengi. Look, I know he was meant to get his loan move out to Derby. I know Rooney probably needs a couple of players out there.
Shola was number 10, man. Shola was number 10.
Just touching on one of our own, Wayne Rooney. I hope, obviously, all that situation that's going on there at Derby. Look, I hope it works out. Very tough situation to be in, but look, hats off to Rooney. At the moment for dealing with the situation with the way he is, and look, hopefully, Joe, it's a tough job for your first management job. But look, hopefully, it works out for him because again, I know he didn't come through the academy, but he was at the club for a lot of years, and I do have that sentimental factor for Wayne Rooney. But we're going to wrap it up there for this evening, guys. Thanks very much, everyone, for watching now and watching on the replay later on. We'll be back this Friday. I will not be hosting the podcast because I'm going to be getting beauty sleep bright and early because I have to get on the bus at 12:30 Saturday morning for the United game Saturday. So I will have someone hosting the podcast. We're doing the preview for Aston Villa versus Manchester United at Old Trafford. And also, London Lowdown podcast will be back this weekend. Also hosted by my man beside me there, Reece, and they will be talking all things London clubs as well. And also, if you haven't already, drop down to Phil's YouTube channel and Beyond the Pitch. Fantastic Manchester United content over there. Himself and Callum McFadden are recording a podcast this week as well after the Villa game. After the West Ham game. So do check that out as well. Drop a subscribe on Phil's channel is there. But as always, guys, thanks very much for tuning in. Devil's Advocate. We will be back later on during the week.
Thanks, Reece. See you later, mate.
Good seeing you, Phil. Good seeing you.
See you later.